follow these scriptures, now the reaper's all on my back. Now it's suspect with these preachers, wonder why they teach what they teaching. You claim that you have truth, but ain't practicing what you preaching. Come around calling me bro, when I needed you, you went ghost. Don't try to get too close, or you just might get exposed. That world mission society had me locked down in my soul, and I'm not playing.
Hey everybody, my name is Edgar. I'd like to welcome all of you back to another episode of Defusing the WMSCOG. And today we have another ex-member, but this ex-member happens to give us a perspective from another part of the world. And I'm very excited about this episode. He's another former title holder, a deacon. Without further ado, Aya, I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself.
Wow. What do you say to that? Yes, hi everyone. My name is Aya. I was a member of the World Mission Society Church of God from I was baptized on the 25th of February, 2006, and I left the church officially on the 13th of January, 2014. So I was a member. I was baptized in Cape Town, right here in South Africa. And I am now currently residing in Johannesburg, which is like the New York essentially of our country. So I was a member for about plus minus 7 years. And I, I was a member, I was a deacon, I did the whole shebang, arranged marriage, all that nonsense. I was there. I believed I've been to Korea twice. I went in 2008 and I went again in 2009, the following year. So I was there, at the highest level that any local can reach. And I left in 2014, sorry. And the only reason why I left is because I went on the website examining the WMSCOG.com. So now, because the only reason why I left after going there is because my entire life of faith in this institution, it was because of An Sang Hong, right? I was there for An Sang Hong. They told me that An Sang Hong 100% fulfilled, various Bible prophecies. I believed it, only to realize once I had gone on the website examining the WMSCG that, oh God, it's nonsense. It's rubbish. It's a made up thing. I was recently just watching another video. I think the former member is Esperanza, I think her name is. And when I'd watched her interview, and she mentioned something that I wholeheartedly agree with. And she says, this church has taken, various teachings from various other organizations. They've patched them together into something that seems logical, but it's nonsense. It's rubbish. So that's why I left. I went on the examining site and discovered for the first time, I did research in 2014, 2013, right? Did research for the very first time and discovered that this is a cult. This is a lie. And that is the only reason I left. So, a big shout out to Michelle and as well as to Ron Ramos and Deaconess Diane. Deacon,
Yeah.
sorry. No, okay, Diane. So because once I saw those interviews, it just solidified for me the reasons as to why I needed to leave. And yeah, that's basically it about me.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear you say that. And again, every time people bring up the OGs of this movement, it really makes me happy because it reminds me like how grateful I am for those people who laid down, you know what I mean?
I know, right?
Yeah, they really paved the way for, the movement that's happening now. So shout out to them, and
Big shout out. Yeah.
yeah, the
Because I mean,
website.
I'd seen, sorry to cut you, but I mean, I'd seen Ron and Diane. I don't know if they still have the DVDs, right? Of, the first overseas trips to Korea.
Yeah.
I don't know if they still have them in those DVDs or those videos, or those church videos or whatever. But like, it was, for me, it solidified it. It was like, if these people can leave, there is something inherently fundamental, like there's something wrong with these people. these Koreans are nuts.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at it and I'm like, no, man, something is off here and something isn't making sense. So when I saw their testimonies, right, I'm thinking to myself, no, then what am I still doing here? Hence,
Yeah.
hence I left at the time that I did. But I mean, there was a whole lot happening at the time,
Right.
personally for me, but it did help because when you're in this group, you're so dependent. You become almost childlike in your thinking and sociopathic. So it is so helpful for me to hear people that I know. I mean, I didn't know them like I know them, but I mean, I've seen you on the DVD.
Yeah.
I mean, there was one DVD when Diane is crying. She's on some, oh, I can't believe God is washing my feet.
Yeah.
This is during Passover or something. And I'm thinking to myself, if this person can leave, if this one can leave, obviously something is wrong.
Yeah.
There is something that it's not all above board here. It's not all kosher.
Right.
So yeah, sorry to cut you.
No, that's actually absolutely right. Like I agree with you 100% because you see these members and you can pick up when people you can see people on these on these films that they have and you see how devoted they look
Mm,
how they really believe this stuff and if
mm,
they left after expressing the faith you see them crying you see all the emotions are there you have to question why would they leave? Why would they leave if they
why would
really,
they
truly
leave?
100% believe this, unless there's a good reason for it? The problem is, before it was so hard for us to hear the other side of the story. And I believe now that the other side of the story is being told, it is creating a huge problem for the World Mission Society Church of God.
Thank
Because,
God for that.
yeah, really. So now I want to ask you something real quick because your name is so unique, and I want to ask you like, does that name have like any significance behind it? Like, tell me a little bit about that.
Oh yeah, I know. So my name Aya, it's phonetic, right? You pronounce it as you see it. So English to me is my second language. My mother tongue is Xhosa, right? So the Xhosa language, for those of you who may not be, if I can give a reference, a cultural reference, right? So the people of Wakanda, the
Oh,
MCU, those people, yeah, the T'Challa, he
Black
speaks
Panther.
my yeah, Black Panther. So the language they speak, right? That is my mother tongue. That is the language that I was raised from. That's mother tongue, right?
Oh
So
wow.
that speaking of Black Panther, I remember. Oh my word. This is after I'd left the group, right? And you know how they always like to say all this dumb stuff, like, "Oh no, you can't watch movies. It's worldly. Oh no, Pada Brookstone, 37 years." So now I remember there'd be times when I just feel so guilty about even going to the movies, right? But then when the time Black Panther came out, I was already like out of the group, out of that nonsense. So now it is just so interesting to see a movie made in the United States, and I'm watching these people speak my mother tongue. It is
Yeah,
interesting. It is,
that
but
is
but essentially, yeah, it comes from Xhosa. The language they speak in Black Panther. So translated, the name means they them. So I'm currently 38 years old, right? So I was born in 1987, and yeah, so that's the name that my dad gave me at birth. They them. That's it. Yeah,
wow. And how old is that language, if you know?
it's old, yo. It's ancient. Like we're talking in the region of about 80,000 years.
Wow.
At a conservative estimate, right? So I mean, we really old. We've been in the continent forever. So
That that that's fascinating, bro. Like honestly,
yeah,
I'd love to I'm curious to learn more about that. Maybe off the camera, right? Because we got
yeah,
to
yeah,
address
yeah, sure.
the World Mission Society right now. But so anyway, I go ahead and explain to me how did you get caught up in the World Mission Society, man?
Yeah. Hey, yeah, that's a story because it was in okay. It was I first met them in 2006, right? So what was happening at that time in my life is that I this was my first year of university. I just completed high school and I was going from high school to university. I was attending the University of Cape Town. Now the university and my hometown are about over 1,000 kilometers apart. So you're talking about driving distance, about maybe let's say 12 hours of driving plus minus. So then now, okay, so there I am. I'm in a new city, right? Cape Town for me was new with everything, the city, the people, because in South Africa, right, there are four racial groups. South Africa, the country that had apartheid and everything, right? So there are four racial groups. Majority is black, like 79% of the country is black. And then I don't know the percentages, but the other 21% is the other races. So you're talking, so there's the blacks, right, first group, and then we've got what we call colored people. So colored people are, I know in the US, you guys, you don't use that word, but for us, if you're colored, we refer to you as mixed race. So if your mom is black and your dad is white, and you as a child of a of that relationship, we consider you colored. You're now mixed, right? We acknowledge your heritage as being from black and black and white parents, right? So
That's
those people
fascinating.
they form their own community, right? We call them coloreds. So and then there are the Indians, right? So South Africa has got the largest Indian population outside of India. So they make up a big part. So you in the US, for example, you encountering Indians for the first time. But for us, we grew up with them, we always knew that Indian people were around. And then the fourth group is the white South Africans, right? So those are the four major groups that exist in this country. So in my hometown, it was predominantly a black town, right? So I went from a predominantly black town of about, let's say 50, 60,000 people to a city of about 5 million.
Mm.
So it is a huge, huge culture shock to me. I'm meeting all these races, all these people. I'm attending university, right? So everything was new and it was an assault on the senses.
Yeah.
So it's my first year of university. And in all honesty, I was looking for a church, right? So I'm looking for a church. I'm like, yes, I want to, because I'm Christian. I was, born and raised Christian. So I'm looking for a church, and I saw these what I thought were Chinese people, with Bibles on campus, and they were preaching. So I was curious. I was like, "What's that? What's going on there?"
Yeah.
And so they preached to me about the Sabbath, and they told me, we go to church on Saturday, and I was like, "Yeah, sure. I'll come to your church." So that was then like in 2006 when I met them for the first time. They preached to me Sabbath, and they preached to me Passover. But the one that really caught me, the one that really, really caught me was the new name. When they told me that the Holy Spirit
Mm.
has a name, I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
like, are you serious? Like, what is this secret knowledge? I'm
Right.
fascinated. I'm 19. It's a new city. This is a novel experience. I'm like, whoa, the Holy Spirit got a name, like I was really, really excited. I was like, it really got me. Who are these people? Who are these Chinese people,
Yeah.
that are teaching me these new things from the Bible? I was captured, by that information. And yeah, it was my first year. I would say maybe from the time that I met them the first time to my baptism, it was about 3 weeks. And I went to the church and then I got baptized there. And yeah, so that's how my journey into this place of torment started,
So, so let me ask you this, Ayas, because 2006, if I'm not mistaken, late 90s, early 2000s, that is when the World Mission Society in Korea began to, expand and begin to go overseas. Do you happen to know what was the year that they actually went to Africa for the first time? Was it 2006 or was it earlier?
it was the year earlier in 2005, actually. So
2005.
that church in Cape Town, right? I remember they'd gone. I'd seen photos of a church in Nigeria, right? But I didn't know when they got to Nigeria. But from what I understood from my then pastor, he explained it that South Africa was the headquarters of Africa, as it were. And, so he was the one who was essentially in charge of the entire African region, as he explained it. So 2005, I would say, is the year when they first started, coming onto the continent. Yeah.
Okay.
But from what I know from other parts of the world, I think they began in 97 in the
Yeah,
US.
97. That's what I
Yeah.
heard as well. In the US, definitely 97. So here my question is, because that's still fairly new,
Yeah.
when you came in. So there, I want to see the difference. I want to talk about the difference between how they conduct themselves now to
Hmm.
how things might have been different. We've heard this in stories like, missionary Ron's and Diane's story. I'm curious
Hmm.
to hear from your perspective, what it was like in the beginning when you said it took you about a week to get baptized. Once you got baptized, what did you pick up on? What was the environment like, the atmosphere inside of Zion where you were at?
It is exactly the same as Diane and Ron have articulated in their videos, right? It was like a family, it was very familial because I would say that the pastor, right, he was more like the father figure, right? And then the Kwansanim, because we had a Kwansanim at the time, so she was more of the maternal figure, as it were. So it was very familial. It was very, very casual. It was very laid back. It didn't feel like a church.
Yeah.
It felt like a friend group. It felt like a social club more than it did a church. I felt, we would have what you call barbecues, right?
Mm.
On certain feast days, we would have, when the feast is now over, as means for us to spend time together as the heavenly family, we'd have barbecues. And those moments were incredibly formative and they were incredibly special because I don't know these people and they were treating me so nice.
Yeah.
They were so welcoming. They were so, so warm, so kind, so generous. All these other things, well, essentially that was still part of the love bombing, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was a very warm, very informal sort of like arrangement. That was in the early days. So when I saw Ron's testimony and he was going on about how even Diane's video, and she was going on about how nice and warm it was. I was like, damn, this it's the exact same thing
Same.
same thing that happened to me. So it is very informal. It wasn't as strict as it is now. So I've heard, that it's become more strict.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was very laid back. It was very chilled.
So what? And let me ask you this, like, because you mentioned it was more like more like a club. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And my question is, was it a house church, office church, or a big church? And then also, how many Koreans were there? Was it just the pastor and his wife, or was there more?
Okay, so this is 2006, right?
Yeah.
So the church was very, very small. It was in a house, actually. So what they did, they rented someone's house. Um, yeah, they rented someone's house. It was tiny. I would say the total population of the church at the time, um, sorry, I'd say maybe there were about, if there were more than 20 of us, it's too much. It was a
Yeah.
very, very small number. And I would say of those 20, nine were Koreans. So
Oh wow.
it was the Korean pastor and his wife. And then let's say there were seven other, I think, Korean missionaries, right? They weren't title holders, they were just, run of the mill, ordinary Korean members who were going on a mission trip to Africa to preach.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was them. And, there was a colored family that was there. Um, and I was probably the only, no, there were maybe three black guys that are
Okay.
there. But I would say in terms of the demographic, it
Yeah.
was the Koreans, it was the coloreds, and us three black guys that were there.
Yeah.
So it looked like Cape Town looks like that,
Yeah.
just as a point of reference.
Yeah.
This particular city is like that. It's supposed to look colored. It's supposed to look to have those people there as the majority of the members.
Right.
So it is small, it is tiny.
Yeah. Okay. So that's pretty fascinating to hear. So it kind of starts off the same in every place that they're
Mm,
trying to evangelize it. Always a house church, and then I assume because this is a whole new region, a whole new territory that they're trying to tackle. That's why they
mm.
send like heavy hitters like the pastor and his wife and seven missionaries. You know what I mean, to basically cover a lot of ground and try to get as many converts as they could.
Yeah,
So
because I mean, even with my sorry to cut you there, but even with the pastor that was there, he was I don't want to say like a superstar gospel worker or a superstar recruiter, because he had come from India, from what he told me. He said he came from India, right? He had established churches in India and Nepal. So he'd come from there. He had done such a stellar job in those regions that they were like, okay, Africa's a tough one. If there's anyone who can do this, it's you guys. So they sent him there with the wife because he was a superstar gospel worker or whatever.
okay. And
Yeah.
now I'm curious to ask you this because obviously you said right away you were blown away by the Bible studies, right? Especially like the
Mm,
new name and a lot of that stuff. I want to get into the teachings. What were the teachings that were being taught in the World Mission Society during that time frame? For
mhm.
instance, were you taught about An San Hong directly, like right off the back in the beginning? Were you told that he was a man who had come in the flesh from Korea and had died? Were you told about Zhang Gil Jah, that she was a woman in the flesh? Well, she was God in the flesh in Korea. Did you ever know that they had children and anything like that? And then also, I already know the answer to that one, but I'm really curious to hear your response. And then also want to hear about a couple more things. I want to also pick your mind a little bit, pick your brain about the 2012 prophecy, if you know what that is and if that was something that was being taught in Africa as well. And then also if you happen to hear about mother not dying and her ascending alive with 144,000. So whichever one of those you want to start off first, I'm
Mhm.
all ears.
No, so okay, I'll start with the first one, the teachings, right?
Okay.
For yes, we were told about Ansang Hong, right? Because with the study of the new name, you obviously then now you're told it's Ansang Hong. You hear it, it's unremarkable,
Yeah.
right? Because I mean, you think to yourself, huh? This just sounds like the Korean version of Jesus,
Yeah.
It doesn't feel spiritual.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, so they did teach me about Ansang Hong, and that for me was the most difficult thing they taught me, right? So bear in mind, this is 2006. I'm being told Jesus came again, he's dead. And I'm like, and then I'm confused. I am lost because now what do you mean he came is dead?
Yeah.
And then, but they did tell us about An Sang Hong. They told us, yes, he is a man living, he died in Korea in 1985. They just told us he died.
Yeah.
And yes, they did tell me. So how it went, because it's a cult, right?
Yeah.
You are systematically fed information. So they don't give everything to you all at once. It comes in stages. So I'll
Right.
probably say this was maybe 2 months in when I learned about An Sang Hong and that he was an actual person. And then a week later or 2 weeks later or something, I can't remember the exact time, but it was some time later. Then you hear about God the Mother, and they tell you, yes, she's in Korea. So then now this for me is the caveat,
Yeah.
because by the time that I was told that mother is here, my at that point in my life of faith in this group, I'm just coming clean here. I was willing to accept anything, right? Because remember, as a Christian, right, I'd never really read the Bible. So everything they were showing me, some of the verses and how they were essentially what they were doing is this is how I learned to say to myself, these people are playing a game of, like Bible hopscotch, like
Yeah.
biblical hopscotch, as it were, jumping from this verse to that verse. Your 19-year-old brain is still dazzled by the verses, and like, whoa, I never knew that verse was in the Bible. Everything that they were showing me was new, right? So I'm excited by this truth, and I was willing to accept. I really need to come clean. If they told me everything up front, who these people were, where they come from, the name of the church, right? That this is important, the name of the church. If they told me their lives, that they were married, they I was willing to accept it all at that time. The part that really pissed me off is the fact that these people lied. You withheld information, and that's a sign of manipulation and deception. It God does not need to lie. And that for me, I could not reconcile the fact that you had lied to me and were not fully open and honest. It made me so angry when I went on the examining, but that's for like later on.
Yeah.
So I mean, at that time, yes, we knew who Zhang was. I did go to Korea, right? On two trips there. I've seen her. On the first trip, that is when I was ordained as a deacon, actually. And I'll admit it is the most confusing thing ever because I'm like, I'm 21. And I
Yeah.
go, why, how am I deacon at 21? It just didn't make sense.
Right.
So yeah,
Let me
I don't know,
so
which other
so
part did you ask?
Yeah, so let me ask you before we get into that part, because I can't wait to get into the Korea part, and but I want to ask you about the two other teachings that I asked about, which was, did you ever hear that she was going to not pass away but
Mhm.
ascend
Oh yeah.
alive with 144,000? And did you also hear about the prophecy of 2012?
Yes. So about the first part, right? It was implied. I really need to say this because this is what deceptive people do. I would see it in the new songs, right? That, we'll go to heaven together with mother. Um, that one famous new song, right? We're going to heaven,
Yeah,
that one.
yeah.
So that song, it implies that she's not going to die, and there was never any sermon that was given that I can't remember any sermon whereby I was explicitly told that mother will not die. It was implied that mother will not die. So by implication, I just mean, for example, like, this thing that they like to do. Say, for example, on a specific week, Saturday, for example, right? Say you have a family commitment, your brother's wedding, someone's funeral, I don't know, someone else's event, right?
Yeah.
And you want to go to that thing, they would normally say, oh, brother, according to your pace, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
They would say, so now it's very loaded language. They're not really telling you directly not to go, but then they're implying. So it was the same thing with mother's death. It was implied that she will not die,
Right.
right? But then, because I was there for so long, you tend to hear things. The Koreans, they trust you slowly, right? So because I'd been so faithful up until a certain point, then I do remember one Korean actually who came to me, and this person told me on some, Aya Gypsanim, if Heavenly Mother die, then new name will be mother's name. And I was
Wow.
like, the fuck? Sorry. I was like, I'm like, what? What did she just say? Like, what do you mean if mother dies? This is maybe circa 2010, right? Around about 2010. And it is just so shocking to me that, what do you mean if mother dies? It is just one of those things that I'd heard. And it was a question mark in my mind that, hang on a second, did this person just tell me that there's a possibility of mother dying? And yeah, it was implied. And then with the 2012 prophecy, right, we were told, it was explicit, the world will end in 2012. The
Wow.
reason why the world is ending in 2012 is because the work of the Jerusalem temple. It's completed. And so now, you know, I'm hearing this, I heard this for the first time after the General Assembly of 2008, actually. So my pastor had gone to the General Assembly in Seoul, and when he came back from that in 2008, he then told us, that's when he told us that prophecy actually of 2012. So I heard it for the first time in 2008, and I was like, yo, like, hey, I
Yeah.
was shocked, man. I was like, there's no way, 2012, you know. I was excited, I was revved up. I was like guns blazing. I was like, yes, finally.
Yeah.
But they were explicit, they did tell us we had sermons. And then one thing that they did do as well during that time, this is very sneaky of them. This, is that they also taught us about the prophecy of 1988.
Wow,
You
the
know,
prophecy of Jonah.
yeah, the Jonah's prophecy. So they gave us Jonah first, right? And then after Jonah told us about 2012. And looking back, I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh, so in once again in their very own devious and backhanded way, they were trying to tell us that no, if it doesn't happen, right? If 2012 doesn't happen, well, Bible prophecy fulfilled, 6 or 7 times or whatever nonsense they made up. So they were looking back now, I'm looking at that process of how they taught us. It was always Jonah first, followed by, this completion of the Jerusalem temple when the 144,000 are found. So yes, they taught
I
us that we're gonna be gone.
Yeah, I have to stop you real quick because this is something that hasn't been mentioned before, and
Okay.
I was actually wanting to make a video about the prophecy of Jonah, and I might still
Oh,
do
okay.
that, but I want to elaborate. Like I want you to squeeze as much as you can out of what you remember about the
Yeah.
prophecy of Jonah. So you're saying the prophecy of Jonah was taught to you guys
Mm,
before the 2012, and it was kind of like hand in hand. They taught you the 1988 prophecy, then they
hmm
taught you the 2012 prophecy, right?
hmm
From what you remember, what was the Jonah's prophecy about?
Okay, so as they explained it, right, An Sang Hong is baptized in 1948, right? So, and then they showed us the verse. I can't remember the verse. When Jesus says, um, this generation will not pass away or something about that speaks of a generation.
Yeah,
And then they
Matthew chapter
explained,
24.
yes, there's that one. So now they explain a generation is 40 years, right?
Yeah,
So they said from the time that he was baptized in 1948 up until, well, then they ask us, well, how long is a generation? And we're like, well, I don't know, because I didn't know. And they're like, no, generation is 40 years. So they show us, okay, a generation is 40 years. And then they were like, so then the end should have come in 1988, right?
right.
So in in that setup that they were doing, I at the time I didn't understand it, because I was like, okay, fine, dude's baptized in 1948. He says within a generation, and it's 1980. I never understood why they told us that within a generation it was supposed to have ended, and then only to follow that up with the 2012 prophecy. Now I understand it was just essentially them, honestly, softening the blow, but like, yeah, maybe it was their own backhanded way of telling us that it's not gonna happen. Don't get your
So
hopes up.
so that is very crazy to me.
Mm,
So they were using 1988 and
mhm.
the prophecy of Jonah, right, to basically elude that maybe 2012 wasn't going to happen.
Looking back, hindsight is 2020. Looking back, I think that's what I think that's what my pastor was doing because um the thing that I learned is that a lot of these pastors they have an extreme amount of authority
Right.
over how they teach, right? So his strategy, this was his strategy, right? When he was telling us these things. that he
Right.
was first telling us 1948 first, and then he would follow that up with 2012. But
Okay.
from what I'm seeing, it seems like, especially a lot in the US, it seems like a lot of the pastors are a bit more, I don't want to say like gung ho, but it seems like they're a bit, fast and loose with the sort of things that they tell you guys. But then for
Yeah.
us, like I'm saying, we had this superstar of a pastor from India and Nepal who's now coming to Africa to teach. And I'm not gonna lie, the man he was a great teacher.
Yeah.
In his explanations, in the way that he would, I don't want to say break things down verse by verse, line by line, but he would literally, he was very thorough in his
Yeah.
in his teaching. So that was his way of doing it, right?
Okay.
And that's what I experienced. So with Jonah's prophecy, they were explaining that it's fulfilled, right? Because in that particular prophecy of Jonah, Jonah wanted Nineveh destroyed, but God was merciful. God was, he showed his grace upon the people. Because remember, with the people from Nineveh, the thing was, I think they repented, right? At Jonah's preaching, they did repent, and God spared them that wrath. So they were explaining that no, God and Sang Hong was merciful. And so he's giving them a chance to fulfill other Bible prophecies, right? So there were other prophecies that they maintained were still not fulfilled. For example, the prophecy of Isaiah, where that speaks of who are these that fly like clouds or something?
Fly
Who are
like
these that,
doves to their
yeah.
nest. Yeah.
So now they were like, no, but these prophecies have not been fulfilled concerning the New Jerusalem, right? So they were saying, no, God spared the people because this prophecy has to be fulfilled. The mission is now global. And yeah, it is explained as though like it's a grace period between
Right.
1988 up until 2012, as it were. So
Wow.
so that you can then now find the other mothers missing children or whatever. So yeah,
So did they how did they get to 1988? Did they mention about the fig tree coming to life in
yeah.
1948? And
Hmm.
then in Matthew chapter 24, Jesus explains in the end where he says, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. And then they say a generation, according to Ansahong, Hong, is 40 years. So
Yep.
1948 plus 40 years is 1988.
1988.
So
Yeah.
that is the first time that An San Hong had predicted the end of the world. But like you said, your leader was telling you guys at the time the world should have ended in 1988, but because
Hmm.
of father's grace, mother's grace, they wanted
Hmm.
the rest of the prophecies to be fulfilled. Then it was extended until 2012. Am I close?
100% correct. That is it. That is it. Yeah. We were told that, yeah, it's the grace period, mother's love. Mother wants to save people. She doesn't want to milk them dry or whatever. But like, yeah, so that's what we were told, and it was convincing because I mean, first of all, the dates, right? This guy is born in 1918. I mean, let's start there. This person is born in 1918 in far off land in the east and is baptized, right when Israel gains its independence. So I mean, I looked at it at those numbers and I was like, damn, obviously, this has to be God. Who could explain these prophecies like this? The fig tree was a big one, right? So that was the sign, that was the sign that summer is near, the end is near. So that was the sign. And then now that there's the Jonah prophecy, and you told, no, 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 but hang on, besides Jonah, there's all these other prophecies about Jerusalem being the praise of the earth.
Right.
So they kept on layering another prophecy and after another prophecy. There was always prophecies.
And yes, that is one thing about the World Mission Society is they will give you 100 different prophecies. But one thing that I want to emphasize on is the
Yeah.
2012,
Hmm.
because they taught you that 1988 was supposed to be the end, but then there was the period of grace. But that period of grace, correct me if I'm wrong, that was supposed to end 2012. According to what the World Mission Society Church of God taught, 2012 was supposed to be the end. That was supposed to be the completion of the Jerusalem temple. I still have it written down in my agenda where we heard directly that the world was going to end in 2012 because mother's word was going to give a word, and she was going to say no more preaching. Enough material has been found for the construction of the Jerusalem temple. Just like in the Old Testament, Moses was told there's no more room, bring no more material for the construction of the temple. So in the same way, on the last and greatest day of the Feast of Tabernacles, mother would also give a word that there was no more material. 144,000 were already found, and we know we were ready to go home. No one needed to bring any more fruit into the church. And they also used the 168 days from the
Yep,
Day
yep,
of
yep.
Atonement into the completion of the temple and the ceremony that took place to mark that time frame. So those 168 days from atonement to the work of the completion of the temple, it took a total of 168 days. In the reality of the feast, they say the spiritual Day of Atonement is actually 1844.
Yes, by
So
the seventh. Who's this? Who's that person? The American.
William
Um,
Miller.
there we go. That guy, right?
William Miller.
So yes, from 1844, and then it ties in as well to that prophecy of the seven churches,
Yes.
and the Church of Laodicea and things like that. So I mean, I looked at these prophecies and I was like, again, my mind was blown.
Yes.
Who else, how do you come up with these explanations?
Right.
The Church of, I can't remember what the translation for Laodicea is, but I do remember, they would, when that study was given, he did translate the church in Pergamum, in Ephesus, Philadelphia, and all these other seven churches. He did explain, partially, he explained it fully actually,
Yeah.
but I can't remember most of it. But for me, it was like, damn, 1844, 168 days. The church in Laodicea comes from the Seventh-day Adventist Church according to these prophecies. So for me, the anchor, the key to this whole thing is Ansang Hong,
Yeah.
right? Without Ansang Hong, I didn't care about Zhang, if I'm being honest. I
Yeah.
was there for Ansang Hong. I was there because I was like, all of these explanations, all of these, what I'm seeing here prophetically, there is no way that a human being could come up with this.
Yeah.
And it's true. He didn't come up with it, right?
Yeah.
It's a consortium. It's a group of people
Yeah.
who are then essentially trying to force Ansang Hong and fit Zhang wherever they can find them.
Yes.
This is a group effort. This isn't one person who came up with this. And I
Right.
only actually realized this, after I left, and I realized, hang on a minute, these explanations that they're giving us, it doesn't sound like it's one person. It sounds like they collaborate. It sounds like they collude, and
Right.
they see which one seems more plausible and more logical. But it doesn't. I don't believe. I think An Sang Hong, they're just using him as, I would say, like a reference point. They
Yeah.
say, "Oh, Pada said nothing about that." So then it immediately cuts you off from asking if you had a question, for example.
Right.
So I mean, it's not Ansang Hong. I'm starting to think that a lot of what we're being told about Ansang Hong is fabricated. I think they're making it up. I don't really believe in any of that. Well,
Yeah.
not now, anyway. Yeah,
So there's a lot of things that An San Hong himself took from the Seventh Day Adventist Church,
that's
and,
the thing.
and then there's a lot of things that General Pastor, mustered together from other cults and things that were going on, during the day, and to come up with this fusion, this WMSCOG doctrine. But going back to the point of the Jonah and the 2012 is very important,
Hmm.
because it's very important to mention again. They believe that atonement, the spiritual atonement, in the
Mm-hmm.
feast it was the Day of Atonement, but the reality of the feast, how Jesus fulfilled the feast, the spiritual Day of Atonement was 1844, and so 168 days in
Yeah.
the reality represented 168 years.
Yes.
And so the
Mm.
world was supposed to end in 2012 because 168 years plus 1844, the spiritual Day of Atonement, gets you to 2012. But
I
like
mean,
you mentioned,
wasn't that, sorry, wasn't that in one of the chapters that they removed from the Green Book when
so
Ansahong?
not specifically that. It was
Mm,
really the 40-year prophecy from
mhm,
1948 to 1988. That is the one that they
mhm.
removed, the 40 year of
Oh,
the
okay.
destruction of Israel. But all of that is connected because you mentioned a key figure, William Miller. this
Hmm.
is this is where that type of thinking comes from, because I remember when I was in the church, I remember that members used to bring up this, objection, like when the website examining site came about, and there was a
Hmm.
lot of things going on in Korea where people were leaking the books that An San Hong wrote and a lot of
Mm.
his writings. And I remember during that time, they were saying to us, well, An San Hong, predicted the end of the world in 1988 and in 2012.
Sorry, just a second.
Yeah.
Were they telling you this because of the examining website?
Yes. Yes.
So
So
they weren't forthcoming with you guys about the 1988 prophecy. And
so
by you guys, sorry, I mean Americans, sorry.
Yeah, so when they told us, well, they didn't tell everybody. They told
Okay.
like the gospel workers, right? So I remember being told like, yes, Father did preach about 1988 and
Hmm.
2012 being the end, but do you really think that that's what he meant, that that was the final end?
Whoa,
If
whoa, whoa,
if
whoa,
he
whoa. It- Did they just ask you that?
Yes, this was when I was in the church. This is
Okay.
yeah, yeah. So I'm talking, this was maybe 2015, 2016, and I remember being taught, right, that
Yeah.
the reason why the church preached that, the reason why Father mentioned 1988 and 2012 as the end of the world, is
Hmm.
because this is just prophecies that needed to be fulfilled, but there was a more of a spiritual fulfillment that we were looking forward to later. They were just prophetical points. And so it's all a grace period. And I remember that they would use the excuse, and at the time I bought it
Hmm.
because they said, how can slanders accuse the World Mission Society of predicting the end of the world in 1988 and 2012? If An San Hong predicted both as end of the world, then that doesn't make any sense. How can someone
Whoa,
predict
whoa, back up.
two
Hold
end
up.
of the worlds?
Did they really say that?
They really said that.
Oh God, they're full of it.
Yes, they
Oh
really
my
said that. They
word.
they said,
Oh, what nonsense.
how can An San Hong predict two ends of the worlds,
Oh my
right?
word.
And at
Wow,
the
these
time, it
people.
made sense to me because in my mind, I said, "You're right. If Father did say 1988 was the end and 2012 was the end, then there could not be two ends. There
Mm.
must be something deeper behind what he was trying to say between
Is that what you thought?
1988.
This is your
Yes.
own
And
reasoning?
because I was a leader, that's what I would teach the members that were like looking at things online. I was always trying to help the members and strengthen their faith by telling them the same thing. Why would Father predict two ends of the worlds? But now I realize, looking back, that
Mm.
that is the dumbest argument ever because of this. I was defending An San Hong predicting the end of the world multiple times as if that was something good, instead of realizing, so that makes him more God because he predicted multiple failed prophecies? No,
Yeah,
that's worse. To
yeah.
me, what that reminds me of is what happened during the time of William Miller.
Okay.
William Miller, this American, he began to put this is why it's so dangerous to interpret the Bible in that way with these kind of thoughts of taking these, revelations and Daniels and putting these dates together from these men who want to force interpretations, because he believed that the end of the world was going to happen in 1843.
1844. Oh,
it,
yes, yes,
it,
yes,
it
yes.
was
Wasn't it
1843.
1834, 1834, and then they revised the date to 1844
So
because,
so it was
yeah.
1834 they began to begin the Advent movement
Oh,
for
okay.
1843. But 1843 is when when he prophesied, when he calculated that the sanctuary was going to be reconsecrated, meaning the second advent of
Oh,
Christ was
yes,
going to
yes, yes,
take
yes, yes,
place.
yes.
But
Yeah.
what happened was when 1843, when that date came and went, nothing happened. So instead of William Miller admitting that he was wrong and saying, "Hey guys, I'm sorry, I
Mm-hmm.
messed up. I shouldn't have done that. I calculated wrong." What did
Mm.
he do? He said, "Oh, no,
Double
no, no.
down.
I'm sorry. I miscalculated. It's
Mm.
actually 1844." So he gave another date, right? But then what happened? 1844 also came and went and nothing happened. So what did he do? Same thing. Instead of being honest and
Mm.
accepting that he failed and that he was giving false prophecies in order to make himself not look bad, he said,
Mm.
actually, 1844, God did come, but it was invisible. It was in the heavenly sanctuary. He cleansed the temple, and that is how he came. He came spiritually. Now, the reason I bring that up is because Ansan
Yeah.
Hong talks about 1844 being the spiritual Day of Atonement. He even says William Miller is the
Mm.
angel of Revelations chapter 10. But isn't it funny that Ansan Hong copied that same pattern from another false prophet? Because Ansan Hong predicted the end of the world in 1988. When it didn't happen, he did something better than William Miller. He didn't wait for it to happen and then cover his tracks. He gave two prophecies so that if the first one failed, he had enough time for the other one, and so that people wouldn't leave his church. But both of them failed.
That's the
And
thing.
he never, not once said, never retracted and said these prophecies are incorrect. Instead, even after he passed away, the World Mission Society carried his torch
Mm.
and continued with the false prophecies. And it's just
And then,
very, very weird to me.
because for me, the thing that really bothered me, well, once I did my research, right, and I'm learning about Ansang Hong, the thing that bothered me was the name. Like, do you know what this church was called? Because I mean, I don't know. Like from, let's say, because I don't know. I think it was established when in 1964. Was it the New Covenant Passover Church of God, or was it the World Mission? What was it?
It was Church
From
of
from
God,
1964
Jesus
until
Witnesses.
that was the name of the original church.
Yes.
Okay. No, that's
Yeah.
interesting because now in their teachings at the WMS, they're implying, right, that it's always been the World Mission Society Church of God, when in fact it hasn't. Right? Because I mean, for me, points like the fact that Ansar Wong dying, I don't think anyone expected that. Right. So obviously, because I even remember uh while now that I think about it actually, because they mentioned the fact that he died in 1985. And it seemed brilliant at the time because it was like he's dead in 1985. This is the 37th year of him preaching the gospel to fulfill David's throne. Okay, so he's done the thing. He's established the church, he's fulfilled David's throne, and he gives a date of 1988. And then they gave the was it the prophecy again or spiritual meaning of saying that Jesus rose on the third day. Ansang Hong died, 3 days later. One day means 1 year. So now, yes, he died in 1985, but he should return again in 1988. I mean, I was hearing things that when I looked at it, the math was mathing. It really
Yeah.
did look like, oh, okay, no, he fulfills this prophecy of David's throne, checks out, he leaves. And 3 days later, the resurrection happened. The resurrection, which will now also be, like the final thing.
Wow.
None of this man's prophecies came true. Everything
Exactly.
is backdated, everything is revised because he himself never said those things.
Yeah.
There's a lot that Ansang Hong did not. This whole 3 days later, Jesus resurrected. Therefore, that's a day for a year from 1985 until 1988. Those for me were revisions. It was like, oh snap, they didn't expect this guy to die. He's gone, and now they have to find and justify it in some way. But the numbers did work for them up until they didn't, right?
Yeah.
Because for me, the interesting part when I left is this whole baptism because there's no evidence of An Sang Hong being baptized in the Seventh day Adventist Church, except for, I think, in 1954
Yeah.
or 1956. So, I was looking at this stuff and I'm thinking to myself, why are you lying? Why are you not telling us the truth that he claims he was baptized in 1948? We have no evidence.
Right.
Why are you doing this? Why are you being so manipulative? That
Right.
for me was the rub that really when I went on the examining website that eventually led to me leaving because I was like, no, man, the prophecies aren't prophesying. Nothing ever happens at this church.
Yeah.
They're always going to piggyback off something that happened previously, whether it's Jonah or Jesus resurrecting on the third day or some other random thing. So
Yeah.
for me, that was a very frustrating point,
Yeah.
when I was there.
And speaking of that,
Mhm.
it's funny how you mentioned about the 3 years right after his death from 1985 because I had never heard that type of preaching before. So it's crazy to me because it's showing you how hard they
Yeah.
try to make these prophecies, patch certain prophecies into the
Yep.
already existing prophecies
They're
because
incredibly
they don't
inventive.
make
Yeah.
sense. And even I made a video with Kelsey where I explained that even the 37 years that we were taught that An San Hong had to fulfill, that was the prophecy of King David. An San
Hmm.
Hong never taught about 37 years needed to
Yeah.
end in 1985. That
I
is
watched that video.
fabricated.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fabricated.
They,
That prophecy, according to An Hong, was supposed to end in 1988, not
do you
1985.
see revisionism? Revision.
Revision, exactly.
They always, but they're incredibly inventive, I must say, because really, I mean, when you think about the amount of effort that goes into the deception, it
Yes.
really is creative. It's not your run of the mill like the Moonies, for example, right?
Right.
These people have spent time. These are, and it really wouldn't surprise me. This is just my own thing, but it wouldn't surprise me if they would go as far as stealing works from academia, like from theologians, right?
Yeah.
Or people who study the Bible. It really wouldn't shock me
Yeah.
that this group of people would go to that extent where they go to the institutions of higher learning and they see, oh, okay, so what are the scholars saying? And
Yeah.
they take those teachings and they incorporate them somehow into their church. Because one thing that I really don't want anyone to, um, these people, you can't underestimate them, right? There's an insane amount of thought that has gone into their doctrine. With every revisionist thing that they do, I think for me, sorry, when I heard about the, what was this thing? Gods, the Jubilee. Yeah,
Jubilee.
Jubilee.
Yeah.
When I heard about Jubilee, I'm sitting there, I'm like, no ways, bruh. I like, there's no way. Another one,
Yeah.
like DJ Khaled up in here. Another
DJ
one,
Khaled,
like
another one.
another.
I
I'm like,
love it.
why wasn't I told the Jubilee when I was there?
Yeah.
Why is the Jubilee now coming up after 2012?
Yeah.
I was like, no, 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 these people are sophisticated.
They come up with prophecies as the time goes on just so that they can continue to keep the members entertained. But one thing that I want to mention also
Hmm.
is what you were explaining about how intricate these prophecies seem, right?
Mm.
And how, because earlier you mentioned like you even thought to yourself, these prophecies have to come from God, because look at the
Yeah.
prophecies of the seven churches, and like, the numbers match. And I remember me
Mm.
myself thinking the same way. These
Yeah.
numbers are so perfect. How does the fig tree and King David and all these different prophecies, the 6 day creation, and all of these, Daniel's chapter 4, the birth year of Ansan Hong, all these
Mm.
prophecies, who can teach like this? This has to be God. But
Yep.
now I realize, no,
It's a scam.
it's actually very easy to do what they do if you
Mm.
can manipulate numbers into and fit people into the Bible. So what do I mean by that? If I want Ansan Hong to fit in the Bible, and I find certain prophecies that I already in my mind, I can make them fit, all I have to
Hmm.
do is manipulate the number. So 1948, I can take Israel. But if he's baptized in 1954, I can't make it work. So what
Mm-mm.
do? Let me lie and say he was baptized in what, 1948. And then the numbers seem perfect, but dishonest. Why? That's not correct. There's evidence to show that that's not correct.
It
Now,
never happened. Yeah.
yeah, and even if he was baptized in 1948, it still doesn't make him second coming Christ, because the prophecy of the fig tree has nothing to do with that. That's another subject on its own. But again, a lot of these things are just things that they come up with out of thin air, like the prophecy of King David. They
Hmm.
say, the 37, the 40, and the 3. Well, wait a second. Show me first where that's even supposed to be a prophecy.
That's the
Where
thing. That
it's
they
just
they
they're messy.
no, there's a lot, because I mean, especially the evidence around Zhang, of her being the Heavenly Mother. Because I do remember asking, like, where's the evidence? First of all, that An Sang Hong said this particular woman, right? This Korean here, this one, she's got the mother. I have never seen evidence like that. So, I mean, I do remember when they mentioned about, So In and, that whole scandal. I do remember them giving some explanation. And even then, oddly enough, when they told me, because they told me I learned about Amsuin in maybe 2008, also more or less around about that time. Because I remember there's a verse in the Bible that says, so when they say, here's the Christ, do not go there.
Yeah.
If even and they think there's a line that says, even in the inner rooms.
Yeah, Matthew 24.
And then they were like, yeah, the inner room, the most holy place, So there's people out there claiming to be mother, but whatever answer who never said mother, never said that lady was, but answer only said, I follow mother. So for me, the anchor to this entire theology, the anchor to this entire belief, it was Ansang Hong.
Yeah.
The moment that something did not line up with Ansang Hong, that for me was the key. That for me was the cue that no, I've messed up somewhere and I need to go find Jesus somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because obviously, I mean, no, this is a lie, it's a scam.
And
People are just scamming us.
and you mentioned, I don't that's a very good point you bring up, but something you mentioned earlier, you brought up the Unification Church, the Moonies. And when,
Yeah,
since we're on the topic, because you said, he steals from other people, right?
he
And
does,
and
yo.
this book, The Divine Principle, it is like the mystery of God and the spring of the water of life for the Unification Church, the
I
Moonies.
remember that book, yo.
So this book was written before An San Hong wrote his Green
The
Book.
mystery of God,
And
yes.
look
Ah,
what
man.
look what some of the prophecies say. So some of the chapters, I mean, that this man wrote, if you can see it on the screen,
The Third
the
World War,
the Third
the,
World War, and
the
keep the highlights, please.
uh, so it says providential summary of the Third World War. This is section one. When will Christ come again? Section two, in what manner will Christ come again? That's page what, 490, or was it 99? And then what does the biblical what? passage saying Christ will come on the clouds signify? And then I can't see the last one. Is there another one?
Yeah. Can you see now?
Just a second. Just bring it up a bit closer. Section 3, where will Christ come again? Would Christ come again among the Jewish people? Oh my God, these are the exact same things that were in the mystery, isn't it?
Yeah, and then read the last one.
It says uh, that nation, wait, Christ will come again to an Eastern nation. That nation, sorry, that nation of the East is Korea. This is
So
all in the mystery. This is all there. Like
yes.
it's there. Yeah, I remember those chapters. Yeah.
So it's so crazy to me that we, when we were in the church, we assume that everything that An San Hong teaches is so
Mhm.
amazing and it comes only from him. And who can do that? I remember not only the studies, but even when I would read his books,
Mm.
specifically Visitors from the Angelic World. That was my favorite book.
Mm.
And I used to say, who could write like this? It has to
You're the
be
only
God.
one. You're the only one.
And
You're the only one. We all thought that.
all thought
My
that.
favorite book, by the way, it was The Law of Moses and the Law of Christ.
Mm,
That is my favorite actually out of his
yeah,
books.
yeah.
But
Now
yeah,
they're good to for barbecue. Throw them in the barbecue grill and cook some chicken on top of that.
no, we mustn't spread toxins into the air. You know, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah,
That's poison.
you're
No.
right. You're right about that. So now let's get a little bit into your story. This is
Yeah.
fun. This is fun, by the way. So now take me to the
Yeah.
trips to Korea. How did you get chosen for these trips, and how was it? How was that experience like?
Oh man. Okay, so the person, first person who had gone from Korea, no, from South Africa to Korea, right? To fulfill the prophecy of these clouds and doves and whatever. Um, I think the guy left in 2007, I think. I'm not entirely sure. I think it was 2007. So later that year, after his trip, they told us, okay, guys, so those of you that didn't get a chance to go now, there's another trip coming up just after Passover, and you can go then. And by that time, this is now 2008. So my dad died, he passed away, and he left me some money. And so that's how I could afford the trip. Because all I did was pay for the plane ticket. So I prepared for that trip then in 2008 after Passover. And yeah, I think it was April or May, I can't remember. So I went, to see Mother, God in the flesh.
Yeah.
It was
How?
anticlimactic, really. You know, it really was. It was anticlimactic because now, by the time you go on the trip, you have been programmed, you have been brainwashed, you are fully indoctrinated, and you believe this woman to be God. So if for example you meet her and you don't have like a strong emotional reaction or response, it's like, ooh, he's stumbling. Ooh, brother, I was a brother then. But then on that trip in 2008, that was when I was ordained a deacon. And yeah, I went. It was interesting, because the thing that made it interesting for me was first of all the brothers that I was with, because some of them I'd seen some of them on DVDs. So it was like, oh my God, these people are real. They aren't just actors or whatever living in the US. These are real church members. And there was this camaraderie. It was incredibly fraternal. It was very warm. We were brothers in arms, man. The end is coming soon. And I even remember one of the pastors, one of the Korean pastors there who works at head office. So once everyone had gathered, like I think there's just over 100 of us. Once everyone has come and arrived, and we're gonna go and meet Mother at the Jerusalem temple, I think. And he said something then. He was on some. I can't remember what he said previously, but eventually he ended up saying something along the lines of, "Yeah, so brothers and sisters, I'd recommend that you not make any long-term plans."
Wow.
Imagine we had just heard about 2012, and he's telling us don't make any long-term plans because it's all going to be over quite soon. So
Mm.
there was this high um, emotion. There was a lot happening. It was incredibly overwhelming. But we met mother. I cried. Oh my God, mother! Oh, I'm so sorry. Right. Um, yeah, I mean, it was unremarkable. There was nothing about her that seemed godlike.
Yeah.
What she does seem like, actually, she seems like a very, if I could say, an intuitive person. She comes across as very intuitive, someone who's like always reading the room, as it were.
Yeah.
And obviously, there is the language barrier because, she only speaks Korean. I thought I felt something. I honestly did believe that, it was a transcendent moment
Yeah.
whereby here I am, I'm meeting God in the flesh, who I just tried to kill in heaven not so long ago, and then here she is forgiving me or whatever. So yeah, the trip was fun. It was fun. It was, for me, the exciting part, once again, it was just the camaraderie that we
Right.
had amongst ourselves as brothers. That, yo man, Africa, you gonna do your thing, Africa.
Yeah.
Yeah, Africa were there, the Americans were there, and some Europeans as well were there as well. And then I think there was someone from Japan. So there was yeah, it was fraternal. It's very brotherly, like we're gonna conquer the world, gonna save people. It was a very infectious sort of like place to be. And yeah, I came back a deacon and I was just so confused
How
because
did
I'm
that?
like,
I'm sorry to cut you off, but explain to me how that happened. You didn't know that you were gonna become a deacon before the trip?
no.
It just happened during the first trip to Korea, and what was said to you?
So my pastor was the one who had submitted the application. So he's the one who chooses who becomes a deacon and who doesn't, right? So I didn't know that he had put in an application for me to become a deacon. I just went there, and then one day, after a sermon or whatever, we were led somewhere. This is at the Jerusalem temple. They call it First Jerusalem, right? I think
Yeah.
there's First Jerusalem and Second Jerusalem. So we were at the First Jerusalem temple after some video or DVD that we'd watched, and oh yeah, they brought us. They called us out, a handful of us, some sisters and brothers, and we went down into an office area and in the temple. And General Pastor was one who like lays hands, I think like this. He lays hands. Mother's in the background praying, and they tell you, okay, you're going to become deacons now. You'll be able to baptize. So it happened then, and oh God, I was confused. I was 21.
Yeah.
I was like, damn, well, what is this? Like, what is she doing?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
she pretty much anointed you as
Oh
deacon.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's how it used to happen for us, right? The only way you can become a deacon, you have to go to Korea. It can't happen, over the phone or over email or whatever. It happens in person. So it felt special
Yeah.
and confusing because I mean I was a child. I was
Yeah.
21. What did I know about life and being a deacon and counseling people and being a shepherd?
Yeah.
I was still in university at the time. Yeah, so I mean I was, oh God, it was dismal. I was failing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so but
I
yeah.
can imagine the pressure, especially when they're telling you the world's getting ready to end, and then
Like,
you just got a title from God herself, and that man, the pressure must have been out of this world, man. I can just imagine. Um, so when that happens and you come back to the United States, when you go back to Africa,
yeah.
what was it like? What was it like? What changed for you? I know you had the pressure. I know you said
Hmm.
that you didn't feel ready. You were very young. But I'm
Mm,
assuming that they just started giving you a lot of more responsibilities. So, like in your life of faith in the church, what
mhm.
changed for you after that trip?
Oh, my life became hell.
Yeah.
I remember after the whole laying of the hands and stuff, and
Yeah.
when they gave us the deacon's books or whatever, hand guides and stuff. So now we had to go back to our lodging. I can't remember the name of this place of that institute in Korea where the foreign members would all go. It's in a mountainous area somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Or was it the Going Come Institute? Wherever we were at that time, as we're heading back from the Jerusalem temple. And I remember I was with one other Latino brother or deacon, and I can't remember his name. I think his name was Eddie. I don't know. I'm not sure. I can't remember what his name was, but it was some Latino brother. And he happened to mention that you need to be very careful about, he's saying this to me, right? As the Latino brother is giving me advice as this newly appointed deacon. He said, Aya, just be very careful, especially around the Koreans, uh, because they are always watching you, is what he said. And for me, at that time, what he was saying was so foreign
Yeah.
because I was like, no, these people have been nothing but nice to me. Yes, we butt heads on occasion, but they've been generally pleasant. There wasn't anything within the relationship that was like, oh, this is getting it to be a bit too much now. The ex- the expectations that came afterwards, they were, oh God, no, they were extreme because you laugh a certain way. Because I've got a very loud and boisterous laugh, right? I like to laugh because trauma
Yeah.
for yeah. So, but now that became a problem. The way that I laugh became a problem. The way that just my body language became an issue. Every little thing I said, if maybe you're busy talking and I'm coughing, that was scrutinized. And the one who was usually always giving me the feedback was the Kwansanim of our church in Cape Town. So she was the one who was always giving me, oh no, you're laughing, your laugh is too loud. You look like, oh my, you're so childish. Why are you acting like this? You're a deacon, it's a very responsible position. Oh, you didn't do this right. She was very nitpicky and incredibly like an Asian mom would be, I'm guessing, right? So she went from being understanding the one moment to being incredibly overbearing just because of a title. Oh, and she was relentless. There was always something I was doing wrong. A preaching meeting that I didn't attend. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, but I have to go to lectures. I need to attend classes because first and foremost, I'm a student. I need to, make sure that I'm up to date with my education. Hey, they didn't care, man. It was, by this stage, because remember, they're telling me that the world is going to end and I mustn't make any long-term plans. So even me concentrating at school was difficult. I I couldn't. I
Yeah.
couldn't do well in my classes because now the world is going to end. I'm going to have to pick and choose. Do I want to save people? Because that another thing that really became stressful was this Bible verse. I think it's in Jeremiah. Um, the one that says, "Son of man, I've made you watchman over Israel," or something. If you warn
Oh,
them that danger is coming. Oh
Ezekiel
yeah,
chapter 3, verse 16, where the blood will be on your hands if you don't warn the
that's the
people. Yeah.
one. That's the one. So now there was this blood guilt because the church wasn't growing in Cape Town. Our numbers were not good. Because this is maybe 2008. So I would say from about 2006 to about 2008, maybe we went from about 20 members to maybe, let's say, having 40 members. But they were not happy with those numbers, because for them, everything is about growing the church and, having these massive baptisms, they wanted that. And I think at the time, the mission that they gave us when they were like, we must convert 3% of the world, and 3% of the Earth's population is like, I don't know, 200 million or something. I don't remember.
Yeah.
So, so we had this ridiculous mission in 2008, whereby we had to find, 3% of the salt or whatever. I can't remember. So the pressure was extreme. Um, the Koreans were always very negative, especially because to them, I've been given a special privilege. The Koreans are the master race and we are their subjects. For me, so to them, anything I did, if it didn't conform to the Korean way, it's wrong. If I don't like kimchi, then it means there's something wrong with me. If I don't like bibimbap, then there's something wrong with me. If I don't like, I don't know, whatever Korean food that I don't like,
Yeah.
oh, brother, oh, 집사님, oh, peace, not good.
Yeah.
So they would say nonsense like
I
this.
let me ask you a question. Now that you brought that up about the Koreans being known as the master race, because
Mhm.
we hear that all the time over here, especially during my time and a lot of the people that I've talked to all over the world. But I'm
Yeah.
curious, since you go back to like the beginning of the overseas like missions during that time, like missionary Ron and a lot of people that I've talked to even recently have talked to me about prophecies that we heard, prior to 2012 concerning the prophecy of Noah's sons and the races, right? Like
Mm,
where so did you ever happen to hear that prophecy? And if you did, could you explain? And if you didn't, that's okay, but you also did notice the racism going on in the
yeah.
church, I assume.
No, no, I mean, those guys are incredibly racist. It's so obvious. But no, I did not hear this Noah's prophecy. That one, they would really have, they would have to be made of brass for them to have told us that prophecy. Because remember, in South Africa, from a cultural perspective, it's a highly racialized country and
Right.
society. So imagine now we've just come out of apartheid, and here you are telling us that no, apartheid wasn't it, and it was implied. It was heavily implied. For example, I remember I think in one of the videos, I don't know if that was you that mentioned that whole notion of Korean culture as heavenly culture.
Yeah.
Was that you? Yeah. So
Yeah.
so then they would tell us that nonsense, right? They would tell us this skak that no, the Korean culture is heavenly culture, and I was like, what the, like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, what is this nonsense? I thought everyone sinned equally in heaven.
Yeah.
All of us are on this planet because of the same sin, regardless of where we're born. And I thought the gospel was universal. I didn't realize, oh no, no, this is a Korean gospel,
Yeah.
right? So obviously, as you get older and as you mature within the church, you begin to see things like that. So no, they never told us about that prophecy about Noah and his sons, but the treatment was always different. For example, black members were treated one way. Colored, they really leaned more towards the lighter skins. Like if you're lighter skin, if aesthetically, if you look a certain way, they would always try and, I would say, push you along on the program, try to get you to commit more and do more for the church. But they told us that Korean culture is heavenly culture. And I was like, this is so ethnocentric. Like, why is it that it is only the Koreans who've got brain cells? Why is it that it is racist? It was like another new apartheid, as it were, but with Korean accents.
Yeah.
Because yeah, it is, but they are racist. The whites are treated differently, the blacks,
Sure.
the coloreds, and I'm not so sure about the Indians. I don't know if they have Indians now. I think they might have a few Indians in there now.
So I'm glad you mentioned that because okay, then it's the same because everywhere I hear stories about that. So okay, we're in agreement with that. I also figured that they wouldn't teach that prophecy of Noah over there, because that would take some gall from them to teach that over there. So at least they, but it is obviously that is not a hidden teaching. I actually was in contact with somebody that's gonna send me the notes about the actual teaching itself. But I heard
Yeah.
that teaching myself, and that's something that was being taught a lot during prior to 2012. But the
Wow.
racism is everywhere. I mean, that's not something that's hidden. They like to say, "Oh, well, we preach everywhere." That doesn't mean that racism
Light.
is not, prevalent. There's favoritism for sure in the church. So I guess, Aya, let me get to this part of your interview. Any red flags? Do you remember any like stories that you think are worth mentioning during your time in the church? Things that you might have experienced or seen others experience that you think is worth speaking out about?
Um, ooh, I don't know because it's indoctrination.
Yeah.
It's indoctrination. So I was heavily indoctrinated. There wasn't so much in the treatment of how others were treated that bothered me because of that anchoring doctrine that we are sinners from heaven. Whatever little we're getting now, in fact, we deserve even less than that. So there was this very much, I saw things that were questionable, but I mean, we are sinners from heaven, guys. We try to kill God in heaven. I'd internalized that belief. And so, in terms of how other people were treated, I did notice with the classism, for example. Oh yeah, now that I think about it, yeah. So by classism, I mean like they would tell us not to preach to certain people, right? Don't preach to the poor, the homeless. We know that one. And then there were people who worked certain jobs. So here in South Africa, right, it is quite common, let's say, for example, for a middle class family to hire someone like a house help to clean around the house because they're relatively affordable. They're relatively cheap. So a lot of the times when we would go door to door preaching and you knock in someone's house, you would find the helper in there, like the maid in that house, she's cleaning or whatever. And they would tell us, no, 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 don't preach to. So we weren't allowed to preach to maids. If the person, let's say, was like almost like a garden boy, but like a yardsman, someone who's keeping like your lawn and everything for you, we weren't allowed to preach to those. The homeless, it was a no-no. So so one thing I did notice for me, that one, yes, that one did bother me. Actually, this whole, I mean, for goodness sake, you're in Africa. This is, shithole central. So obviously, not everyone that you meet here will have money. So it bothered me that now we're discriminating in the poorest part on planet Earth. Here we are discriminating against people. And it was a red flag, yes, because I looked at it and I was like, but this is not Jesus. Jesus never said this. This is not the same Jesus. Why is Jesus discriminating based on your financial status? Was my issue. And again, it's the doctrine. We sinned in heaven. We sinned in heaven. So I guess it's okay, so, but it wasn't, that for me, I can honestly say now it was a red flag because especially after I became a deacon, and I would always try because there's no winning with these people. You can't win. You will always do something wrong. It is a given. So I remember, for example, let's say church members who didn't attend a preaching meeting, for example, and that person just rocks up to Zion for whatever reason. And I'll be like, oh, brother, can I make you some coffee? We're going to do a study now. Can I make you some coffee? And then once again, surprise, surprise, the Kwansanim or some Korean deaconess is going to come to me and say, oh, brother, you must never give them poodle because they just come to church for our poodle, like they just there to eat. And I'm sitting there, I'm thinking to myself, what? It's coffee. It's a cup of coffee. Like, why is this a big deal? Why are you guys so stingy?
Yeah.
and so nitpicky. It didn't make sense then. And I was like, God, do you see this? Like, do you see how your children, your chosen ones, are acting? So if there was ever a red flag, it was that one,
Yeah.
whereby they were discriminating based on a person's financial status. And yeah, it did rub me the wrong way. I didn't like it. It was very classist. It was very, because obviously it's going to go into being very racist because most of the people in this country who have money will be white.
Yeah.
And obviously coloreds maybe will have a bit of money. And, us blacks, we like, oh, at the lower end. So then now, this experience that God who discriminates on people based on their financial status, that for me, I would probably say was the biggest red flag. And then also we didn't preach to sick people or something because yeah, I don't know how familiar you are with black people and black culture, right? But for us, we can be incredibly expressive, and especially in churches and religion, right? So I don't know if you've ever seen those shows when people are like all of a sudden healed,
Yeah. Yeah.
by
Yeah.
praying in the name of Jesus or whatever. And there's this elation, people are excited, they're dancing and everywhere. So we had to tone it down a lot. And they told us, no, don't preach to the sick, because they just want miracle. Oh, they really hated, which was another red flag, actually, now that I think about it. This whole, why are you guys so anti-miracle?
Right.
If this is the same Jesus, if this is the exact same person who came 2000 years ago, miracles, then, I mean, come on. Then he must do what he did the first time.
Yeah.
He must heal the sick. He must provide, he must be a sanctuary. So those things for me in the doctrine were problematic, but then I couldn't voice it because the problem is me because how dare I read the Bible and compare Ansang Hong and Zhang to Jesus and say, but hang on a minute, guys, Jesus did this, you guys aren't doing that. So
Mhm.
yeah, those were probably for me the two biggest red flags.
That's wild to hear you say that. And it's also heartbreaking and infuriating at the same
Yeah.
time because it just shows you once again over and over and over again where the heart of the World Mission Society lies.
Yep.
And they don't care about the people, they care about what can you do for them. The
Hmm.
church 2000 years ago and Jesus Christ and his teachings totally different than
Very.
what this church how this church
Oh man.
operates.
And
What?
especially if I may, if about Jesus, right? Because now one thing that I kept on doing, especially when things were getting a bit too difficult towards the end, I was always referencing the Bible and looking at what Jesus did. That for me was, I could say it was a light in the dark, because by always looking at what Jesus did, and I'm like, but this is not the same person.
Right.
With what Jesus says, I think even there's a verse, and I don't know, is it Matthew or somewhere, when Jesus is like, do not greet only those who greet you. What profit do you gain from that? Do not, if yeah, it says, be like God who makes his sun shine on the righteous
Yeah.
and the unrighteous. So, I mean, I used to read things like that and I'm like, yo, but this God is very selective, eh?
Yeah.
Like, yo,
Yeah.
this mother God, hey.
It's totally different. Jesus was hanging around with the people that had no money, with the prostitutes, with the lowly people of the world. And these people don't even want to associate with them. They
That's
don't even think that they're worth hearing preaching the gospel to.
very
And
snobbish. Yeah,
that is so sad. It's sad and honestly just it's straight evil, and it really shows you again once again the true characteristics of this church. I still to this day I don't understand how they can really get away with what they're doing, other than just the brainwashing,
the brainwashing. Yeah.
but it's just really it's very eye-opening to hear you share your experience from another side of the world, but once
Yep.
again very consistent to everywhere else.
It's
you
the
know
same. It's the
it's
same. It's
just
the same. They've taken essentially Korean culture and they're exporting their culture to other parts of the world, and they are unwilling to, at the very least, understand where we might be coming from. They're very much, I don't say abrasive, but they go in and they take over. They come into your life and your life is over. That is it. You must do things the Korean way, act Korean, speak Korean, your mannerisms, every your authentic self is completely erased.
Yeah.
And that for me, I was because one thing that they always kept going on and on about, oh, sorry, you
No
know,
problem.
um, they kept going on and on about North Korea, right?
Oh yeah.
And I thought to myself, North Korea, dude, we don't care about North Korea, right? We're in South Africa, we're far away from North Korea. Why should we care about, at the time with their doomsday prophecies, coming with that whole World War III thing, they were going on and on about Kim Jong Il, right? Who's Kim Jong Un's dad. They were going on and on about him. I mean, he died.
Yeah.
The grandfather died, the father died, and now Kim Jong Un, in this, communist dynasty that they have, he's the one who's in charge. I mean, what happens if, let's say the peninsula is reunited,
Yeah.
What happens if North and South Korea reunite? Then what? So they've taken their culture, they're exporting it to other parts of the world. They don't even care to know how we function here. That to me did not seem empathetic at the very least. Empathy is not something you'll experience with these people.
Yeah.
You'll get so-called prophecies, but empathy and humanity, that one is gone.
It's funny to hear because we talk about this a lot in my videos about like the Korean culture, and it's mentioned,
Mm,
and like you said, I find it fascinating that you bring up the point that they want to put their culture impose their culture on
mm,
everywhere else. And I'm thinking back to 2000 years ago into the life of the apostles, and when they went out to the whole world, to different nations, they weren't imposing a Jewish culture on the people. It was the other way around. They were bringing a Christian culture, Jesus' values,
mm.
his morality to the nations. And it was not about a Jewish thing. If anything, the Christians were trying to get away from the Jewish traditions and hold to Christianity and Jesus' teachings as most important. That's why you find verses in, Ephesians and Galatians and, Corinthians and all over the New Testament where Paul says there is no longer Jew nor
Or
Gentile,
Gentile, yeah.
right? And so we're all one in Christ. And yet you have this place that says, yeah, we're the same ones, but you need to follow our culture. You need to look
Yep,
like us, dress like us, walk like the people we like, dislike the people that we dislike, preach to the people we think is worth saving, and don't preach to the people that we think are not worth saving. Everything like them, but they're so far from real true biblical
that's it.
Christianity.
It's
Even
not
the
there.
the Christ, God himself, nothing like Ansan Hong and Zhang Gil Jah. You mentioned earlier, they say, oh, don't focus on the signs. This is a different age, that don't focus on the miracles. But they say Jesus Christ was prophesied to do miracles. Father and mother were not prophesied to do miracles. No, that is not only the situation. Yes, Jesus Christ was prophesied to do miracles, but because he's God. But there are many
Mhm.
instances in the Bible when even people came up to him, touched his garment, and
And they
he
were
and,
healed.
and they were
Yeah,
healed because he was God. He
that's the
knew
thing.
he could transcend even when it wasn't expected. He could transcend because he was God.
Even
These
by his
people,
word. I mean, even by
right?
his word, wasn't there some child who was healed by the word? Jesus was like, your daughter will be healed. And the guy remembers that, wait a minute. That dude that I met on the road told me, by the word,
Exactly.
he is the living word. You know what I mean? So then now I was looking, so yeah, looking at Jesus actually, that's what really, really helped ground me in a way.
Yeah.
Because by focusing on him and, not these Korean gods, eventually I was able to, eventually leave this place
Yeah.
just by looking at what did Jesus say and then compare and contrast that with, what is Zhang doing? Oh no, Pada coming very true. I was like, oh God.
And remember, Jesus taught his disciples teach about Jesus. They say what God wants is not your money. God wants you.
Mm,
Church of God says, no, no, no.
no, no, no.
We want your money. Unless you bring us money, you're not
We,
connected to father,
oh
mother.
man, they're
it's
so superficial. They're so
it's
greedy.
it
I
really
was I
is.
was I was I was listening to is it Mitch? The one who
Yeah,
was on Adam's channel, and he was going on about how they bled him dry, and I was like, oh, this is brutal.
it
I
really
know these
is.
people, yeah, they're exploitative, you know. That's what they're there for. They're there to milk you dry, you
Yeah.
know. I mean, I wasted my youth. I wasted the prime of my years because eventually I did end up dropping out of university.
Oh
I
wow.
dropped out in 2009, right? Because I was failing. I wasn't studying. I dropped out. Oh, my family was angry. Uh, yeah, I was angry at myself for failing. But then, the end was coming.
Yeah.
Father was coming very soon. So the things they say, they do have an impact on our lives.
Wow.
And it really rubs me the wrong way to think that this thing is still ongoing. Do you know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
I mean, when I hear about the other members who are baptized, 2014 or 2015 or whatever, I'm like, yo, there's people who are still, getting baptized into this.
Yeah.
So it has not stopped. And the things they tell us, they do impact us. The things they tell us to do, they mess us up.
Yeah.
So yeah, this experience, I wouldn't wish it upon anyone. Eh?
Yeah. It's unfortunate, but cults like this they expand, but thankfully also because more people like yourself are willing to speak out, now they are starting to people are starting to wake up
Yeah.
and leaving in big numbers, and we're hoping that this year really is the year that we cause a big blow to the World Mission Society, where more members are willing to come out and speak out and share their experience, and
Mm,
it's only a matter of time. I truly believe in my heart that light always triumphs over darkness, and
mhm.
I really believe that we're getting close to that time finally with this organization.
Oh
I
man, that's gonna be some great news, eh?
Yes, absolutely. I I guess in conclusion, wrapping up this interview, let's get to the part
Mm.
where how do you leave exactly? Like what was that process like?
Okay. Ugh, things get interesting. All right, so okay, so where am I? I'm now, let's say 2009, right?
Yeah.
Let me pick it up from there.
Okay.
I have dropped out of university because I am failing, right? So at that time, the church was in Cape Town, right? So I left Cape Town and went back to my hometown. My hometown, the name is Queenstown. So I go back to my hometown and I've dropped out of university. I'm telling my mom that, yeah, I'm going to go work, I'm going to go get a job, and that'll be that. What I then do, I managed to get a job in Johannesburg, where I am right now, in Joburg. So I found a job here, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to start the church here. Yeah, what was that line? The youth like morning dew or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was like, yeah, I'm fulfilling prophecy and stuff. So I'm like, yeah, the youth like morning dew. I'm gonna, drop university, go to Joburg. So Johannesburg and Cape Town, the distance apart from each other is about 14 hours, 16 hours by car. So it's quite a huge, huge distance between the two cities. They're like opposite ends of the country, as you know. So I was like, no, there's no church in Joburg. I'm gonna come to Joburg. I'm gonna preach, yada yada yada. I've got a job. I'm working. Thanks to father and mother. So that's 2010. I get the job and I start the groundwork for Johannesburg. At that time, it was myself and two other brothers. One of them was my friend from high school. Actually, I'd recruited him. Yeah, my friend from high school. I recruited him, and he recruited someone else. So it was the three of us. We were gonna go take on Joburg. So Joburg is way bigger than Cape Town. So Cape Town is about 5 million people living there. In Joburg, in the greater metro area, is about 9 million people.
Wow.
So it's a bigger blessing. I was excited. I was pumped. I was amped. I was like, yes, let's go. I start the church in 2009. It's growing very slowly because I'm working and preaching, so I wasn't a full-time gospel worker. Despite having a title and all the rest of it, I didn't want to be a full-time gospel worker anyway. So I yeah, I start in 2010, sorry. There I am in 2010. I'm working and studying. I'm sorry, I'm just working and preaching. Sorry.
You're fine.
I'm working and preaching, and oh God, that's 2010, right? And then 2011, I get a call from the pastor. He says to me, "Oh, Aya, we're gonna come up to Joburg. We're gonna have a short-term preaching mission, and we'll come help you out that side." I was happy. They came, and in the month that they were here, I think we had like 200 baptisms or whatever. So it was a very successful mission trip, and I'm doing okay. I'm doing well. I'm working, and I'm preaching. I'm excited. So then I get another call later on that year in 2011, and the pastor tells me, "How about you doing this thing full time?" I'm like, "Okay, cool, no problem." I quit my job. I then go on to do the gospel work full time. I was alone. I was still single then. You
And you
know,
were
um,
leading the church.
I was leading the church. Yeah, I was
Wow.
leading the church. And yeah, I was leading that church, and it was growing. We were doing really well. I mean, for the mere fact that in the space of about 6 months, we had, a little under 50 people, just 48, somewhere around about there, people that were regular attendees of the church, right? So I was doing well, it was good. Gospel was great. And then later on that year in 2011, I get a call from a new pastor. The other pastor that I'd known left. He left, went back to Nepal, and yeah, they got another guy, another Korean guy. And he calls me and he tells me that, dude, mother says you need to get married. So we have a wife for you. So
Wow.
I'm looking at this and I'm like, what I'm
Mhm.
shocked. This is 2011 because I'm like, I'm gay, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not hiding this from anyone or anything. So I'm gay. I'm like, I'm not a lesbian. Why is God, why is God telling me to get married? Um, to a woman. I'm like, it didn't make sense. I just didn't get it. But I was like, the end is coming. It doesn't matter. 2012 is around the corner. So I get married in 2011, and it was it was okay. She was a black sister, South African sister. It was okay. I was married, and but then now the problem was there's things that I cannot do for her that she wants me to do. Yeah, there's certain things that she wanted me to do, and I just couldn't be that, obviously.
Right.
And she was unhappy. She was very unhappy. Mine was, girl, just hold out. I mean, the end is near. I mean, 2012 was literally a couple of months away.
Right.
And okay, fine. She's unhappy. And for whatever reason, I get demoted. I get demoted from Johannesburg and I get called back to Cape Town with my new wife now and to head up another church in another region there. That for me was very painful because I'd literally started the Johannesburg church from nothing, right? It was literally out of my own efforts. And then now it was like a baby was getting ripped away from me. That began for me, it began the process of, if I can say, deconstruction and literally just trying to think, how am I going to get myself out of this? So fast forward, I'm back in Cape Town. My wife is unhappy and she outs me to, oh, no, no, she discovers that I'm gay. And then she outs me to the pastor. And then the pastor is like, oh, you guys should just stay married. And mine was like, no, it's not fair. And this is now July 2012, right? So there was a lot happening. I'm like, first of all, it's 2012. Why are we still here? You know,
Yeah.
I didn't get it. I was like, okay, I'm a bit confused. And then on top of 2012 that happening, I'm like, okay, now I'm married, I'm like, God, this is a lot. I couldn't think. I really couldn't think. And so I separated from my then wife. It was all my own decision. I was like, no, let's separate. I'm gonna go back home, go stay with my mom, and you can sort yourself out. And so that was that moment when I was separated in about July or August of 2012. And by now the cat's out of the bag. Everyone knows I'm gay. And yeah, I was separated. So there was a separation from, I would say, the last time I attended a church service, right, would have been about July of 2012. And the next service I attended was the following Passover in 2013. So from July to about April, it's a good chunk of time to be away from the indoctrination, to be away from the influence of the group. I was at home and there was no church in my hometown. So while I'm there at home, I I began to notice certain things, man. I began to look into the doctrine. I purely based on how I was being treated now, because I was like, I've been faithful for so long. I've upheld my end of the bargain. You told me the world is going to end in 2012, but now we're going into 2013 and nothing happened. And I, I was confused. That was, if I could say that, that was a moment of, you know how some people when they met with stimuli, when they met with some sort of event or something happens, some people, they can just literally become numb and unresponsive, right? I can honestly say for that period of time I was numb, and because now objectively 2012 was not the end of the world. How do I silence the dissonance? How do I silence now this event of the end not happening? I couldn't. I really couldn't. So in 2013, I went back to Joburg. I came back to Joburg, got another job here, and I was working. Yeah, I was working and trying to attend because they'd established other churches in Joburg in the region. So I didn't go to the one that I had established because it was a bit shameful. I was like, oh no, they're gonna be asking me where my wife is, and all the rest of it. And I wanted to avoid those uncomfortable conversations. So I opted to just go to another branch church and just attend there. So I was keeping 2013, I was attending. Fast forward to about December of that year in 2013. I I remember I was sitting at an internet cafe and I just sent mother an email. And for some reason, you know, I can't explain this. I myself cannot explain it. For some reason, something said to me, Google the Church of God as a cult, right? And I did that. And the first thing I see, there's Ron Ramos.
Yeah.
There's Diane Sims. I am like, ah,
Yeah.
hey, Bo, you know when you see something and you're like, am I really seeing this? Am I really,
Yeah.
is this Ron? Is this the Ron? I was in such disbelief. I was like, I must have stared at that screen for like maybe like a good 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Because now I'm thinking to myself, nah, fam, this is like maybe a scam, No, they're faking, they're putting fake stuff out there with,
Yeah.
there's Ron. That video of Ron Ramos explaining why he left. That was it. I saw Ron's video. I saw Diane's video as well. I was like, game over.
Yeah.
It's a cult. It's a cult. So it's a bit of a long story, but essentially that's what ended up happening. It was because I went on the examining website. And after I watched Ron's video, I even remember this because I even left a comment with my name there underneath that video. I left a comment with my name and I mentioned some of the problems I was having with the group. Fast forward to a couple of hours later, I'm getting a call from, the Korean pastor in Cape Town, and he's like, "Oh, I heard you, Sanim. What is the problem? Like, what's wrong? Is everything okay? Are you fine?" I've never spoken to this person ever since I left in July of 2012. He's now calling me in December of 2013 because I had left a comment in a video,
Wow.
with a former member. He's now calling me and he's like, "Are you okay?" I was pissed. Like, I was so angry. I was angry. I was livid, actually.
Yeah.
So now, that day in December of 2013, I remember that was the day I was like, you know what, I'm done. But the key event, like I keep saying, it was the examining. Because, oh yeah, another thing I saw on the examining website as well that really just, if my head could explode, like I was furious when I saw An Sang Hong officiating in that Passover ceremony of whatever church that was. That photo for me was, oh my goodness, wow. It, because now, sorry, sorry. Anyway, so that photo of An Sang Hong officiating at that Passover ceremony, it was like a switch came on, the gears began turning, and my mind was like, what the fuck did I get myself into? The first thing I thought, because in the new songbooks, right, and in the stories that we were told by the Koreans, the one thing they told us, oh, Father, very poor. He broke stones. He would fast for 40 days and 40 nights. He barely ate. Yada, 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 blah, 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 blah. Oh, he was so miserable, always writing the truth books. I was always imagining these scenarios in my head, right? To see a photograph of this man that I've been worshiping for the last 7 years, officiating at a church that is not the World Mission Society Church of God, I was like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
You know, he's officiating, and you see the photos, he's there with his family. He's eating birthday cake. And I'm thinking to myself, damn, this is a completely different person to what the new songs had told me is. This is this looks like an ordinary person. There's nothing about this person that seems godly or godlike or God adjacent. There is, my goodness, this looks like a random person. So I was really angry when I saw the photos of An Sang Hong, you know, officiating at a church that is not the World Mission Society Church of God. That for me was the moment when I was like, I'm done. It's a cult, and I need to essentially rebuild my life. Um, so I don't know. Did I answer your question?
Yes, that was perfect. I love it. I love it because it's always when members do their research, that is
Yeah,
when it hits them like a tidal wave, and there's no looking back from that point, because the facts are all right there, and WMSCOG members watching this might say, "Oh, people leave because of internet slander." That's not internet
that's not
slander.
slander. It's not
That
slander.
that
No.
that is facts. You shouldn't. People shouldn't be mad because people did their research. What the
Mm,
WMSCOG members should be mad at is, why didn't they tell you guys these things up front? You should be mad at the church, not at people speaking out and telling their story. Be mad at your church for not telling you the entire truth of how everything started and lied
that's the
about
thing.
literally everything.
Oh man, yo, the lies. Hey, I could not believe.
You know,
Hey,
I'm,
the from yeah.
I'm sorry to cut you off, Aya, but I wanna highlight, because even recently in Las Vegas here in the United States, there
Mhm.
was a leader who was mentioning that people fall away because they saw pictures of An San Hong with a birthday cake. and they
Mm.
say, what is wrong with that? Why can he not enjoy a birthday cake if all the
Oh, the
members
deflecting.
came together and put money together for the cake? And then he also brought up in the message, it was a message sent to the people of the group chat, but
Yeah.
there's someone who is he's my eyes in there, and he
Hmm.
grabbed that message, screenshot it, and sent it to me. So I saw what the leader was saying to them, and
Hmm.
he mentioned in that message about the birthday cake, and he also mentioned about the lake picture where An San Hong is at the lake with his
Yeah, it's at the
family.
beach.
Yeah,
Hey,
and he says this picture is they were doing a church event. What is wrong
no,
with
please,
him
whatever, whatever.
being happy and in the water? And I remember immediately in my head I thought it's deflection, because
Mm.
it's not that I'm mad that I'm seeing An San Hong enjoying cake. I'm not mad seeing An San Hong in the water. What I'm mad at is that you guys lied to me and told me that he never enjoyed anything, that his
Yep,
life was full of sorrow and pain, and
there we
that
go.
every single day of his life was just agony and sacrifice. And then you see him in front of a cake bigger than any cake I've ever eaten in my life. You see him at a beach, posted up, hanging out. You know what I mean?
Like living life.
Living life. Meanwhile, the members are told we should not enjoy not even one day because we are sinners. We need to do the gospel work every day. Don't boast about tomorrow. Live every day like it's the last day.
And
That's
sorry,
why I'm
sorry,
mad. Not
sorry
because
to cut you off,
yeah, go ahead.
but another point concerning An Sang Hong and this whole, I don't know. Oh, you never went to Korea, right?
No.
So now, when we were in Korea at this at one of the lodgings, right, that they have there specifically for overseas visitors. I really forget the name of this place, but in the church promo, they say that it's got like an eagle or whatever. They say, did you know that place that they say it looks like an eagle or something? Do you
Yeah.
remember that
Yeah,
church venue in
I
Korea?
don't remember the name, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
So now what they did, right? I remember when I went in 2009, they did a replica of a house, right? And in this house, they are alleging, they're not saying this is how An Sang Hong lived. They're saying, well, all poor people in those days lived in houses like this, right? And it's a shack, really. I mean, it's a shanty of a house. They say, oh yeah, so Pada lived like this, and they're showing us how he would cook his meals, and where he would keep the firewood to warm up the under, like the floor heating and stuff, and this is how he lived. And so now seeing this dude with his wife and with his kids, I'm like, I matter those nights were not so cold, Mos. Those Korean winters were not cold if you have a wife and kids.
Yeah.
Dude, come on, like
And
you are
where are they
lying.
gonna fit? Where's he gonna fit his family if he lives in a shack?
You know,
Where is he gonna? They say he had one suit. He had multiple
lies,
suits.
lies.
Where did he fit all the suits at?
No, man, people
It's lies. It's lies,
upon
man.
lies, upon they lie, and on top of that, if you really think about this, mother is also there,
Yeah.
co-signing this lie. God is on earth and she lies.
Yeah.
Come on.
Deception. Deception at its finest, man.
God, again, God lies. I, I, I I hate the thing. I hate deception because if with deception you usually get the short end of the stick, right?
Yeah.
You're getting shafted. If someone is deceiving you, it's because they're getting a better deal. Imagine God, the creator of the tiniest elementary particle to the largest black hole in the universe and stars and galaxies and things. That God lies. So when I say that I was pissed, it's not it was a visceral response. I was literally shaking with anger because I'm like, God is lying again. This is the same Jesus who came 2,000 years ago, and she lies, saying Ansa Hong lived in a shack when he didn't. Why are you lying? I mean, yeah, sorry.
No, you're fine, man. It's true.
Yeah.
It's honestly infuriating. They lie about so much. It's like Ansan Hong lived in a shack. Like, nah, bro.
Mm-mm.
He probably owned a Radio Shack. Maybe that's what you meant, you know? This guy had a lot of money. He at the time in the church was small, but because of the end of the world prophecies, all the
Mm.
money was coming to him.
Yo,
He was
yo,
not
yo, yo,
poor.
yo.
He was not poor.
Mm.
How could they afford to get the buildings? I have
Oh,
pictures of the original buildings that they bought to hold the first services. I have pictures of him in multiple suits. I've showed this. I've made posts about this before. This man was not poor. He was not poor at all.
mm.
Those cakes cost money. I'm sorry, but I can't afford a
Mm,
cake
mm,
like that
mm,
even
mm,
right
mm.
now. So my point
'Cause
is the
that's interesting
deception.
because now if the motivation for church members giving them money is because of the end of the world, then obviously that became the MO for the church then.
Yeah, they saw that is the way to make money
Mm,
and that is
yeah,
the way to spread faster, you know?
yeah.
And yes, disappointment is going to come when the end of the world doesn't happen, but that's why if you think ahead and say, "Oh, well that was a testing period, a period
Mm,
of grace," and just
mm,
continue to
mm,
make
mm,
different ends of the worlds, then no problem because you just keep moving the goalposts. And this
mm,
is what
mm,
they're
mm.
experts at doing since the very beginning. But anyway, I
So the
really
guy had money. The guy had money.
yeah. Oh, he had money.
That's that is interesting.
He had money, and
So
Zhang Gil Jah has a lot more money as well.
yeah, obviously, I mean she's loaded. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously they're making all of this money tax free, right? I
Hmm.
mean, there's no tax in that. So it's like the perfect scam.
Yeah.
I really doubt if Zhang doesn't, there's intent behind what she's doing. She knows what she's doing.
Oh, she
Both
knows.
her, both her and Kim Ji-chol, they know
Yeah.
exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, no man, wow, this guy was loaded. Look at that.
But you know what? This year, 2026, is the great awakening, man.
Oh yeah.
This place is going down. So again, I really appreciate you doing this.
No, thank yeah.
I want to end this with this. I want to
Mhm.
ask you if you could give any advice to any current member that could be watching your video, what would it be?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe the same old do your research, right? Just do, I mean, that's it really. God, I'm always reminded of this verse in the Bible, right? You know, it's John chapter 3, verses what is it, 19 to 22. I think it says, and this is the verdict. Light has come into the world, but men loved darkness instead of the light because their deeds were evil. Whoever does evil hates the light and will not come into the light for fear that his deeds will be exposed. But whoever lives by the truth or something comes into the light so that it may be seen that what he has done has been done through God. There are no lies in in the truth.
Amen.
God does not lie. I'm trying to think of a Bible verse whereby Jesus said, "Don't believe what those people are telling you. They're just slanderers. Just believe only these prophecies." Jesus came with the prophetic word
Yeah,
and he came with the miracles, the sign of God's power.
yeah.
He showed himself to be God by his works, by what he did. So, yes, do your research, number one. And then number two, if I could think of something, there's this saying, a person can hide what they're thinking, a person can deny what they said, but it is impossible to hide what you did. If anything else becomes difficult, look at the acts. Look at how they treat former members, right? Someone who's there for 7+ years, 10+years. How do you treat that person now that they're no longer part of the group? What happens to ex-members? Why are they excommunicated? So just do your research, and most importantly, watch what they do, not what they say, right? Not what they want, watch what they do. if they come down hard on you for doing the research, that is an immediate red flag, because there should be transparency. They come into the light so that we see that you're doing the works of God. Only those who do evil want to hide from the light. So just do your research. That's it.
Yeah, man, that is a great verse. I'm glad that you brought it
Yeah.
up, and it's very fitting for the World Mission Society Church of God,
Yeah, yeah, no,
because
definitely.
everything they do in the darkness.
In the
But
darkness, they're hiding things, they're lying, deflecting here, deflecting there. Man,
But you know what? The light is gonna shine on them this year. I really have a feeling.
yeah.
So I really appreciate your time, Aya. I really hope that
Thank
we can
you.
we
Thank
can
you.
stay connected, and I really appreciate you coming on and telling your story. I already know it's gonna help so many people.
I'm
And
I'm grateful. I'm grateful to help, man. Thanks for for allowing me to do this. I look forward to other collaborations.
for sure, man. I would love to. And to all the public that's watching this, once again, I just want to thank you guys for sticking with us, since last year. And now we're in 2026. And I promise you, we're going to do our best to expose the World Mission Society and help as many
Mhm.
people as we can. And as I always say, until next time, thanks for watching another episode of Defusing the WMSCOG.
You are the way, I'm only asking for guidance, so I am not led astray. Had some people in the church say they love me, then left me broken. Hypocrisy at its highest, by their fruit you will know them. I ain't saying that I'm perfect, I've had some people I've hurt, and some bridges that I left burning. It took me some time to grow up, but who I am today can't be compared to the past me. There's life inside his word, as you pay for us.